guys, today we're tackling urban gardening. So you don't actually need a large backyard to grow your own fruits and vegetables. You could easily work with a balcony. I know my balcony is pretty large, but even smaller balconies you'll be able to work with. So what you grow in your space is really going to depend on where you live, how much light you get, and how much wind you get. These are things you're definitely going to have to consider, especially if you live in a high-rise apartment building. So the higher up you are in the building, the more wind you're going to have to deal with. And if wind is something that's going to be a huge issue, I really recommend getting something that can block the wind. I'm actually just using an old mat here. They do sell things that will help with the wind in store, or you can also just look through your closet and see what you have that you can reuse. So when working with a small space, I really recommend considering growing upwards. So as you can see, I have a lot of space, so all of mine is just in these single tubs, but there is a lot of things that you can buy or reuse. A ladder shelf, and that way you can like stagger all your plants. So some other tips you can do is if you want to grow strawberries, you could easily use one of those shoe holders, you know, those huge plastic things that you put hanging off of your door. You can actually use that for your strawberries as well. Just put a plant in each one and make sure that you put holes so that the water can come out. And also when working with a small space, you're going to have to consider companion planting. And that's something I highly recommend, not just because it saves space, but also because a lot of these plants will benefit from being next to each other. There's also going to be a lot of plants that can't grow next to each other and also can't grow after you pulled another plant out because it may have used up all the nutrients in the soil. So these are all things you're going to have to consider when you're planting your balcony garden. Let me give you an example of companion planting. Right here I have my strawberries. You can see, I think there's a few. This little baby's growing in right now. Another example, my cucumber growing with my green bean. And green beans add more nitrogen to the soil, which cucumbers really benefit from. And there's actually a couple other plants that would benefit with growing next to a green bean, or even when you end up reusing a container after you've harvested your plant and you grow something else, the soil is going to be really rich with nitrogen. So I'm actually just using this to grow my plants, and this came in my box of wine. I really like to implement stuff that I'm basically reusing instead of buying new stuff. So you can actually save a lot of waste and money by using things like this. Here's another example of me reusing something. This is an egg carton. The stores do actually sell like seedling trays that you can buy, or you can just reuse something like this. And the plants really seem to like it. Growing your seeds indoors is a really great way to get a jump start on the season. Right now it's really warm in our area, so I could probably put most of my seeds outdoors at this point. So here's another example of something that I found works really well with my seedling trays. This actually came with my other carton. It's for the wine bottle, so this is actually where the neck of the wine goes in. And then I kind of cut these up. So it used to be, all of these pieces used to go like this, but I just cut them in half and now I can use them like this. And the reason I really love this system more is because some of my seeds tend to grow a lot faster than the others, and some will end up being ready for transplant faster. So then I can just pop these right out. I do actually reuse my old boxes, especially right now with quarantine happening. We are using a lot of delivery services, and it just kind of made me feel bad about all the cardboard that we're contributing to waste. So I decided to reuse them as little flower beds. So I did actually buy some of my plants instead of growing them from seed. For example, I have my tomato plant here and this little tomatillo plant. And these ones basically came in all of these. So I ended up reusing them for the plants that can grow outside without needing any indoor growth, which is my arugula, my kale. I actually transplanted my cucumber in here. He used to be in the egg carton, but he got to graduate to his own little thing. Right now it is a little late in the season to be growing arugula and kale because they don't like the heat at all. They are a cold climate growing plant. But San Francisco, it's rare that we go over 65 degrees. So I'm still kind of growing these. If it gets too warm in the day, I'll move them to the shade. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the things you're going to have to consider when you're living in an apartment that might be really high up is the fact that it's both a pro and a con, is that you don't get many insects up high, which, you know, that's good because it won't eat any of your plants, but it's bad because you may not get things like bees or other good insects that will help pollinate your garden. If that's the case, if you live somewhere up high, like the 25th floor, I recommend pollinating your plants either by using a paintbrush or a Q-tip. It's going to want to gently brush the plant with either your little paintbrush or your Q-tip or something similar. And it's too small, but this brush it does have pollen. And then you're just gonna wanna touch other plants too, you know, or other flowers. You just gently brush, brush, brush. You can move over to here where the berries are. You're just gonna wanna gently brush, 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 brush. You can gently brush over here. Just, you know, collecting, spreading the pollen, doing what the bees do. Gently brush in there. I know right now we all have plenty of time to water our garden, but once this quarantine is lifted, I recommend getting something like this. You just fill this thing with water and you put it over the moist soil, and that'll buy you about 2 to 3 days if you forget to water your plants. And the tree will basically just drink whenever it's thirsty. You can actually make your own too, which I haven't made any for any of the others because they're a little too small of the plants. And also because we're in quarantine. One of the other reasons I recommend getting some of these like self-watering items is because soil will dry out a lot faster in small containers like this. And I think they also dry out faster if you use things like this one, which is made of felt. But I did buy this specifically because it had the option to peek inside. And I think that's really good if you're growing things like potatoes, beets, or carrots. Right now it is probably too late in the season for most of you to grow beets and carrots because those are also cold loving crops. Some plants that I would really recommend for right now is tomatoes and berries because those are summer plants. But again, it does depend on where you live exactly. So self-watering planters and plastic planters in general are a little more expensive. I think these are cheaper, and it's definitely way cheaper to just use cardboard boxes. If you're going to use the cardboard boxes, one thing I recommend is reinforcing the sides with tape. So if you can see, I put tape, not just to hold the flaps down, but also I put it down this. And the bottom does have more tape too. I just use clear tape. Duct tape is probably way better and way stronger. And another thing is I arranged my plants to make sure that they're getting the sunlight that they need. In the mornings and pretty much until noon, this casts a shadow right along here. So I put the plants that don't mind shade, like the lettuce, the kale, and the arugula here. And then things that love to be in sun as long as possible, I put here. And then these guys, I'm probably gonna move them soon just because it is getting pretty warm. Back to the topic of companion planting. I have kale growing here with my tomato plant. And the tomato plant actually puts a good amount of shade, but still lets some sunlight in. And it's actually grown pretty long. And I'm growing a herb here. I can't actually remember which one I have growing. I know I have basil, sage, and rosemary. So that's like the really nice thing too about companion planting is you're able to grow so much more together. And you can see here actually with my tomatillo, his garlic is coming in. And I actually just used a garlic clove from store-bought garlic to grow this. And that's another thing too, is you don't need to go buy seeds, you don't need to go buy plants. There are plenty of vegetables that you can get in store and reuse. And garlic is one of them. I recommend buying this. It's a 3-way meter. It will measure the amount of moisture, light, and pH that's in your soil. So I care about the pH because most of the soil that you buy at the store isn't going to be the right type of pH level for a lot of your plants. Citrus trees in general like more acidic soil, so you're going to have to add some acidity to it. Same thing with cucumber plants. And one of the things I found that we can actually use to add more acidity is coffee grinds. So if you look, you can actually see the coffee grinds in there. I think because it has both the coffee grinds and the green bean growing up in there, this cucumber looks really nice, really healthy and happy. And he grew pretty quick. Other natural things that you can add to your soil besides coffee grounds is actually your hair. So check out your hairbrush, pull out some of that hair and add that to your soil. You can also use eggshells. So save your eggshells, boil it in water, and then save that for about a whole day. And then once the water is nice and cool, pour it onto your plants. If you don't want to use those methods, just go ahead and buy some fertilizer at the store. All right, guys, so there's just a general overview of the things that I'm doing for my garden, just because I know, especially right now, people want to start growing fruits and vegetables, but they're pretty intimidated because they don't know where to start, and it feels like everyone else has a green thumb. This is actually the furthest I've made it growing my own plants. I have occasionally bought a basil plant at Trader Joe's, which I forgot about and didn't water, and it died. So this is a huge progress, and this is a huge project for me, and it just goes to show that anyone can do this. And we'll go ahead and update you guys every now and then once the plants start getting bigger and bigger. We can also go into more detail. I just didn't want to pack it so much full of information, especially because there are actually better resources than me out there on YouTube to check out. All right, guys, video's not quite done yet. We actually started filming this about 2 to 3 weeks ago, so I just want to give you a little update on what the garden looks like now. This was actually a gift from Taku for my birthday. And down here we have strawberries. We have arugula, which is already going to seed. And then we have kale on this level and lettuce up here, which hasn't grown in yet. And then I just put this right on top. It's got my mint, it's got my lovage and spinach. I've actually already harvested the radish, which used to be right here. Radish is pretty fast growing. Usually radish will be ready within 3 to 4 weeks. You guys saw earlier in the video, the carrots were really small, and now these are much taller here. They've been thinned out as well. And the cardboard boxes are holding up pretty well, as you guys can see. And I've got more radish over here. This one actually is pretty much ready over here. And once I pull these radish out, I'll probably be putting in some cucumber, or probably putting cucumber and green bean or something in here. Tomatoes are much bigger. I've also added this to help support them. And so I'm actually just using fishing line right here. And it's tied to the top of the balcony. And then I put my macrame string, and it's just running straight down the plants. Have it running from the base here very loosely to help support the plant. And here's a little update on the beets. They used to be really tiny, and now look at them, they're almost ready. This is also the carrots, much taller. I think my beets and carrots will probably be ready within 1 to 2 more weeks. At the plant store, I saw they have shishito peppers, so I decided to buy those. This is the newest addition to my garden. You can see my raspberries right here coming. Very cute. I also wanted to say, so I had mentioned this in the video about the pH scale, and this actually stopped working for the pH, but it still works with the moisture and the light levels. I'm actually using a different pH one now, and it basically has you collect the dirt, put it in these little containers just to test the pH soil. And so far that one's worked pretty well. I'll put the link in the description for that one too. And this one, in case you want to try this one out anyways. It could have just been that I had bad luck and mine broke within a few weeks. It's also starting to get really hot these days. So I'm probably not going to be planting any more greens, beets, and carrots, especially this coming week is about to be 70 to 80 degrees. I decided to start a wormery. The way this one works is I have holes both on the top and the bottom, and any liquid will go ahead and drain out into this bin, and I'll end up using that liquid to fertilize my garden. Once the worms are done with this bin, they'll just go ahead and move up to this one, and then I can use this to fertilize my garden while they start eating the new compost in here.